Okay, we may have a few more people join us, but it's 2 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Katie Pattison. I am the workshop chair for Southwest Missouri SCORE, and I also coordinate business resources for the Springfield Greene County Library District in Springfield, Missouri. Happy to have you all here today. This is Start a Home Bakery and Turn Your Hobby into a Side Hustle with our presenter, Allyson Grant. I'm going to do a quick introduction to SCORE and SCORE services, and then we'll turn it over to Allyson for our presentation. So if you're not familiar with SCORE, SCORE is a nationwide nonprofit that has resources for you for the life of your business, from idea to exit. There are 3 things you want to remember that we do here at SCORE. We provide free business advice and mentoring, so you can request a SCORE mentor. We offer low or no cost business training, just like this session you are in today. And we also have quite a few great business templates, resources, on-demand courses, and things like that on the SCORE website at score.org. I'm going to dig into each of those things just a little bit deeper. But first, I want to tell you what we have coming up here at Southwest Missouri SCORE. We do Tuesdays at 2, just like today, on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month. So our next Tuesdays at 2 is happening on February 8th. It is called From Zoom to the Boardroom to the Stage, Using Your Voice to Your Best Advantage. And our presenter that day will be Dr. Heather Nelson. She's a vocalist here in the Springfield area. And then we have a hybrid workshop, so in person at the Library Center here in Springfield, or you can attend that one virtually. And that is Credit Strategies for Small Business Owners with Mary Overby of Borealis Consulting. You can find all of those at our chapter website, which is swmissouri.score.org. You can register right there at that page. So everything SCORE does is possible through the effort of our volunteers. We have over 10,000 volunteers serving clients in over 1,500 communities. If you are looking for a way to get engaged in your business community, SCORE volunteering might be the right fit for you. I'd love for you to reach out to me and I can tell you more about that. Here's how you can contact SCORE if you're interested in volunteering. If you want to look at some of those business resources we talked about on the SCORE website, if you want to request a SCORE mentor, you can visit our chapter website, swmissouri.score.org, or the national SCORE website at score.org. If you're interested in volunteering, head to this score.org/volunteer website, or just shoot me a little message in the chat and I'll tell you more about it. Okay, now I will introduce our presenter today. Our presenter is Allyson Grant. Allyson is a bakery business coach who uses her 20+ years of bakery ownership experience to help the baking obsessed. And we have some baking obsessed people online today. And for those of you that weren't on earlier, now that I've learned that you're all bakers, I am going to need you to mail me some of your baked goods. I will put my address in the chat. No, I'm just kidding. I won't really do that. But if you want to mail me some, please look me up. Whether you've always dreamed of selling your home baked goods or you're ready to level up your home baking business, Allyson can help you become the entrepreneur you were always meant to be. So she's going to share some of our secrets with us today. Allyson, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, I will stop sharing my screen and kind of turn it over to you.
All right.
And just real quick, Allyson, Allyson has some handouts. I'm going to put a link in the chat that will have those handouts. So you can kind of follow along and have those. Okay, thanks, Allyson.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm going to take over and share the screen. And sorry about that. There we go. How's that look? Can you guys all see that? Start a home-based bakery.
Looks good.
Awesome. Okay. So today I'm so thrilled to share with you what I have learned over, as Katie said, 30+ years as a home-based baker. Who started out as a home-based baker, grew this into like a much bigger type of business, and really learned how to take this love of baking and create an income with it. So whether you're just sort of thinking about starting to sell something that you like to bake, or you're ready to take this up to, kind of an income generating business for yourself. Today, I'm going to share with you the steps that you need to take and how to actually go about doing that. So in those handouts that Katie shared, I've got a workbook for you that kind of walks you through what I consider the four most important steps. And then I also included a wonderful list of things that you can think about selling as a home-based baker. So we're going to go through some business elements, and then we'll go into some kind of fun brainstorming with what you might want to sell. And then I'll leave a little bit of time at the end for some questions and answers, and kind of hear from you what it is that you're thinking of selling, and find out how I can help you to take that first step and start selling your home-baked goods. So let's jump right in. Katie had mentioned a little bit about my background, but I want to share with you exactly why I am sitting here today talking to you about starting a home-based bakery. I actually started as a baker. Like I said, 30 years ago. I worked for other people for quite a while, and I loved it. I felt like I was learning and growing and building my resume, but I had this burning desire to really kind of tap into that entrepreneur that I felt like I was inside. And that led me to finally open my own home-based bakery. 17 years ago, I opened that bakery. Within the first year, I had so many orders that I couldn't fulfill them in the size of my kitchen. And I opened my very first retail store. From there, I fell in love with being a business owner, and sold that business, and then went on to open a chain of 3 retail cupcake shops. So with a little thanks to some exposure on the Food Network and getting a mention in Rachel Ray magazine, I had a level of success that I really wasn't even prepared for. So what I have done since then is begin to share what I learned along the way. And I do that on my website at the Better Baker Club. I'm just a passionate baker, much like most of you in the audience, I imagine. And I like to share what I've learned so that you can have the success that you're seeking as well. So I have a Facebook group that's called Home Bakery Business Tips. That's a free Facebook group. If you're wanting to find a little bit more information after this presentation, I would invite you to take that as your next step. And then over on my website at thebetterbakerclub.com, that's where I share recipes that I've used in my bakeries, tips and trainings on things that home bakers really need to know about. So those are different kind of ways that you can take the next step after today's presentation. My mission is, ever since I really fell in love with baking, I have fallen also in love with teaching people how to make money from their baking. So harness that creativity, that passion that you feel for your baking, and learn how to turn it into a reliable income generating business for yourself. So I do that by sharing everything that I've learned along the way. So today we're going to be talking about how to get started selling your home baked goods. And I know that you're all excited. I saw in the chat some of the delicious things that you're thinking of selling: some sourdough bread, some custom cakes, some cookies. The sky's the limit. And that's why I love home-based bakeries so much, is because there really is so much that you can do with it. But we need to do it the right way, because there are limits and rules and regulations. So once we take a look at those, then we can get into the creative side of things. So let's go ahead and start. Let's start with how you get started in, turning your home baked goods into an income generating business. We're going to cover 4 things today. We're going to talk about the cottage food laws for your state. We're going to talk about deciding what to sell, how you decide what you're going to sell. You're going to learn a little bit about how to set your prices. And we're also going to be talking about identifying your target customer. So those are the 4 elements that really go into getting started. And let's go ahead and start with the laws. And I kind of have to pause and, blah. It's not the most fun part. I promise you it gets more exciting after this, but this is one of those things that a lot of people like to skip over. And if you take one thing out of today, I want it for you to be to check your cottage food laws, learn what you can and can't sell, and take the time to do a little bit of research so that the home-based bakery that you start is a legal one. Because if you don't take this step, you might find that there's repercussions to not having taken the time to do this. So the first thing, what are cottage food laws? You might not have even heard the term cottage food laws or a cottage food operation. Well, this is a set of laws that allows you to prepare and package food from your own home. So this is sort of the overarching category is called cottage food operations or cottage food laws. And these are what make it legal for you to do this out of your home. Now, cottage food laws are different in every state. So you really have to look at the state you live in to understand what the rules and regulations are. Every state has a slightly different set of rules and regulations. And in those rules and regulations, they tell you things about what ingredients you can use, for example. So you may, for example, be on Facebook and be in a baker's group and somebody is selling cheesecake, and then you're doing your research and saying, wait, I thought we couldn't sell cheesecake. They probably live in a different state than you do. So it's a little confusing in the beginning because there's just a whole different bunch of, rules and regulations depending on where you live. So learning the ingredients that you can use in your state is going to be important for you to take the next step, which is going to be to figure out what you can sell. The ingredients that they use, let me go back one second. Let's talk about that a little bit more. The ingredients that you can and can't use are, they may seem kind of nonsensical, like they just are random lists of what some people say you can't use. It's legal in one state, it's not legal in another. But the reason that the states are determining what you can and can't use in your baking is because there are some ingredients that can make people sick. So if you think about, the food and the inspections, the health department inspections that restaurants have and caterers have, they are closely inspecting the temperature of your refrigerators or how long your food is left at room temperature, things that control the safety of your food. But inside your home baking business, you're really not subject to those types of inspections. So the way that the states control your operation and keep it safe for everyone is just removing certain potentially hazardous foods from your list of ingredients altogether. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that and explain why there are certain ingredients that you can't use. They basically don't want you to make people sick. Another thing that the states control in the cottage food laws is how your items need to be packaged and labeled. So your state has specific requirements on the type of packaging that you need to be selling your food in, or the type of labeling and the information on the label that your baked goods have. So some of those things might include stating the ingredients that you use. Some of them have you state your ingredients in a particular order. Some of them have to have you stating an allergen warning on your labels. Sometimes you need to warn people or advise people that this is made in a home bakery that's not subject to inspections. So by complying with all those things, we're following the laws for our state and selling legally from your home. And then the next thing you need to understand from these laws is who you can and cannot sell to. So this is going to be dictating where and how you sell your baked goods. So for example, if I was going to bake a cake in my home-based bakery and I wanted to sell it to my next door neighbor, that's probably okay. But the state might say you cannot sell it to a restaurant or a cafe. And that's going to drastically impact the way that you decide that you want to run your business. So by learning about these cottage food laws first, you're going to see, as we go farther into our presentation, you're going to see how knowing this ahead of time is going to help us to kind of decide what our business will look like. So the areas that we can and cannot sell include things like, can you sell at a farmer's market? Can you sell out of your home? Can you do deliveries? Can you sell online? Can you ship and sell to another state? So these are some of the things that your state is going to dictate for you. All right. And then this is the one that always feels like, it's good news, bad news. It is, how much is your state going to allow you to earn from this business? So some states do place earning limits on how much you can, how much money you can make from your baking business. The good news, though, is that these cottage food laws are evolving and changing. There's been a big wave of new laws recently. And one of the things that they are trying to make changes to are these earning limits. So it would be worthwhile to learn before you get started and make a lot of investments in your home-based bakery, how much you can actually earn in a year. So some states, it's $50,000. Some states it's $100,000. That's not a bad side hustle at all. But there are a few states that say that you can't earn more than $20,000 a year. So if that's an issue for you and you have this goal of maybe doing this full time and creating, a livable income from it, you definitely want to know that up front. So the reason I said, this is the not fun part, it really is like doing your homework and deciding, is the state that I live in going to allow me to do the kind of business that I want right out of my home? Because if it does, then you know that you are really prepared to work within the laws to build this dream business of yours. So all of that being said, now we get to start to talk about the fun part. And this is, what do I get to sell in my home-based bakery? So I noticed that in the chat when you guys joined, you were sharing some of your ideas, and it sounds like a lot of you already know or have some ideas about what you want to sell. And I want to tell you that that's a good thing. It's really good to come into this with sort of a sense of what you like to bake and sell. And let's talk a little bit about how you can develop your menu and choose what it is that you're going to sell. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is jump back over to those cottage food laws that we looked at in the beginning and make sure that you are following those state guidelines. So when I was talking about those potentially hazardous ingredients that your state takes off of your list, I'll use cream cheese as an example. Cream cheese is something that requires time and temperature control so that you don't make people sick. And it's generally one that states don't allow. And if you had your heart set on starting a cheesecake business, then you would definitely want to know that your state doesn't allow you to use cream cheese at all. So you want to refer to your state guidelines for the ingredients that you can and can't learn, or can and can't use as you go. Next, I want you to think about what you're known for, because if you are really good at a certain type of baking, then that is where you want to start. So what is it that you generally bake for other people? What is it that you love to bake? If you are somebody who often, let's say, bakes cakes for neighbors and friends and family, and people are always raving about your birthday cakes, then maybe creating a custom cake business is something that would be a natural next step for you. Think about the things that you are always asked to bake, the things that you get the most compliments on, really what people know you for, and start there. It's really important when you're putting together your menu and your bakery concept to choose a niche. You just can't be all things to all people. So if I am this custom cake business, I've always loved baking cakes for my own children, and I've baked cakes for nieces and nephews and neighbors. I'm going to build this business around a custom cake concept. And I find that maybe my neighbors want to be supportive of my new business and ask me if I could do some custom decorated sugar cookies, for example. It's really tempting to say yes. You want to make a sale, obviously, when you're a new business. You want to encourage your friends and families to order from you, but it doesn't really fit in with the plan that you had. So it's okay to say that's not something that I offer on my menu at this time, and really stay in this niche that you've committed to so that you can grow and develop that. One of the things that I think is really hard in the beginning is staying true to your original concept, but I think the payoff is so much better. You're going to see as you grow your baking business that there's actually a lot of work that goes into adding a new item. There's the pricing of it, which we'll talk about. There's photographing your products and writing a good description and sharing it online, ordering the packaging for it. And there's just a lot that goes into it. So it seems like a no-brainer to say yes to an order, but it actually dilutes your business and your brand when you say yes to everyone and all the things that they ask you to bake. All right. So all that being said, maybe you have in mind right now something that you think you want to sell. This is the step that really takes your hobby from being a hobby to making it feel a little bit more like a business. So when you have to put a price on something you bake, it's not as easy as it sounds, because there is a kind of an emotional element to it where you might feel like, I don't know if I can charge those prices yet because I'm just getting started, or I don't even know how to begin to price my baked goods because I've never had to do that before. To be honest with you, this is where I spend most of my time helping home-based bakers, is helping them learn how to price their items for sale. Because now we're taking this hobby and turning it into a business. You need to make sure that you're covering all of your expenses and making a profit. So let's talk about the steps that you need to do to price your home-baked goods. The first thing that you want to do is add up all of the ingredients in your recipe. And you can do this by saving your receipts. You can go through your recipe and calculate how much it costs you to make that item. And then you also want to include the packaging and labeling that you need to use to sell that. So let's use that custom cake business as an example. I would add up all of the ingredients that it takes me to maybe make this beautiful chocolate cake. And I need to put that cake on a cake pad, and I need to put that inside of a box, and I need to put a label on it. So all of those are costs associated with selling that item, and they need to be accounted for. And then you need to pay yourself for your time. And this is where it becomes really easy to sell yourself short. But without paying yourself for your time, you're not going to be making money in your business. So I encourage you to think about recording how long it takes you to make your items. So I saw in the chat when we started, some of you like sourdough bread, some of you like cookies. The next time you go and bake that recipe, you should write down your beginning time and your end time. And you want to be able to pay yourself for the work that you did, just like if you were going to go into a job and do that work for someone else, you would expect to get paid. So when you do it for yourself, you need to get paid for that time as well. Then you need to add in any overhead. And overhead is something that can be a little bit confusing for a home-based bakery, because you're working out of your home and it feels like you don't have any overhead, right? I mean, it's just your own kitchen, and you don't really have a lot of expenses. But there are some hidden expenses that you do want to think about. So say, for example, you are selling at the farmer's market You need to include the costs associated with being a vendor at the farmer's market. That is your overhead as a home-based baker. If you pay for subscriptions, maybe there's an app that you like to use to edit your photos or a membership site that you belong to, that's your overhead as a home-based baker. So you do need to account for any overhead that you incur, any overhead costs that you incur, and add that in to the price of your item. And then we can start to talk about marking it up for profit. So once you know all of the costs associated with creating this product, paying yourself for the time, adding in your overhead, now you can decide how much profit you want to make on it. And here is where there's a little bit of variance depending on your level of experience or the market that you live in, what your customers are willing to pay. Your markup might be a little bit different where you live than it is where I live, for example. Some areas have an economy that's willing to pay a little bit more for custom cakes. If you live in, a rural area, they might not be as receptive to those kind of prices. So your profit is going to be where you can create that wiggle room a little bit. So those are the elements that go into pricing your home baked goods. So now let's see, we've talked about how how to get started by identifying your cottage food laws. And we've looked at what you can sell as a home-based baker and how to price it. So the next logical step is, how are we going to start to sell this stuff? Well, this is where you want to begin to identify who your target customer is going to be. And your target customer is going to be anybody that you have a relationship with. So this is my personal method for selling baked goods. And this is how I built my own businesses, because to be totally honest, I didn't have a marketing budget. I relied on talking to other moms at the soccer game. I relied on telling my dentist that I had a bakery now. I relied on, just talking to my neighbors and people and my hairdresser, and everywhere I went, I would talk about my business. And sometimes we call this word of mouth marketing. I like to call it relationship marketing, because it's so much easier to do business with people that you know than it is to place an ad on Facebook as a promotion for a cake that you're making. It's much harder to make a customer, to create a customer that way, than it is to find a customer in the relationships that you already have in your social situations. So think about the people that you interact with already and how you can talk about your baking in a way that would promote your business. Okay, so the next thing that you can do to find your customers is to create a social media account for your baking. So if you are on Facebook or you're on Instagram and you love baking, chances are you probably follow a home-based baker already. Some of their social media accounts don't even look like home-based bakeries. They're so professional and polished, and you can create a social media presence with little to no investment. So I love using social media for your baking as a way to gain visibility. Now, you don't have to feel like you have to be everywhere all of the time. I would recommend picking one social media platform and starting there. If you don't have an idea on where you want to start, I would say start with Facebook. My feedback from bakers is that Facebook is where they get the most engagement. Instagram is great for looking at pictures, looking at reels of techniques and procedures, but Facebook is where the business transactions happen and the sales happen. So you can create a Facebook page for your baking business. And then on that page, you can share photos of your work. You can upload pictures every time you bake something new. You can give descriptions about it, tell them how good it tastes, tell them how they can order from you, how to contact you, different occasions that you specialize in. If I were doing a custom cake business, for example, I might share all of my birthday cakes in one album, and I might share all of my baby shower cakes in another album, and then highlight different reasons why you would work with me by talking about occasions that people use to order from me. So you can create albums of your work on Facebook. And then I also recommend joining Facebook community groups. And these are the groups that are local to your region, where it might be something like, Springfield, Missouri moms groups, or Springfield foodies, or something like that, where it's a local group of people. You're connecting with people who actually live in your area, who would be able to come and pick up a special order from you, and you're able to sell in those groups. The difference being with the Facebook community group is that you are talking to local customers. If you're doing an Instagram account, for example, it's wonderful to have 1,000 followers, but if those 1,000 followers are all over the globe and it's time for you to have a sale, then those aren't actually customers that can buy from you. They're followers and not customers. So Facebook emphasizes this local aspect, and that is a great way to start to build your customer base. All right, so the final thing that I want to emphasize is that get involved in local events. It's really one thing to create this business in your head and think about what your customers might want to buy from you, and even share pictures on social media. But the moment that you get in front of an actual customer, and then you start having a dialogue with them about what types of flavors they want you to try, and when will you be selling this, and how can I get in touch with you? That's when it starts to come alive. When you can talk to your customers and get that kind of feedback, and sell directly to them, you really start to understand who you're serving and how you can serve them better. So I encourage you to start to think about using local events like a farmer's market, or in my town, they have a holiday mart, or a fall festival, any type of event that you might sign up for in advance, set up a table or a booth, set out your best baked goods, and interact with your customers is going to give you such an amazing amount of feedback for what people want from you and your business. So that's a little overview of how to find your customers. Now, before we jump into the question and answer session, I would just want to give you a couple of final thoughts, and then I would love to hear from you what kind of questions you have about your baking business. So I want to remind you that you can do this as a part-time or a full-time income from selling your home baked goods. You don't have to leave your present job. You can do this on the side. You can set the terms so that they work for you. The most beautiful part of it is that you can work from home, and there's so many benefits to working from home, as we have all become so familiar with these past few years. You can be your own boss and set your own goals. And to be honest, this is the part that really lit me up inside, is that I am a goal-oriented person, and I love the idea of setting a goal and achieving it, and setting another goal and achieving it. And there's nothing like working for a boss that crushes your goals to really deflate you and your passion and your talents. So when you work for yourself, you really get to set your own goals, and that is so empowering. The possibilities here are endless. I mentioned selling at farmers markets, but you can also feature your products inside specialty boutiques if your state allows it. You can create an online store on Etsy, and you can ship your products if your state allows it. And you can create you can express your creativity doing exactly what you love. And that is the most fulfilling feeling in the world. So I hope I've given you some inspiration about creating your home baked business. And I'm excited to hear what kind of comments and questions you guys have.
Okay, Allison, thank you. We do have a few questions already in the chat, and folks, go ahead and do ask your questions in the chat, and we'll have Allison address them. So the first one was about finding your state's cottage food laws. So Carrie was asking specifically if you knew about a link in Missouri, because we do have a lot of Missouri participants about cottage food laws, but I would expand that and say, are there state departments that typically handle those laws that people could seek out a particular state department, or how do they find that?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because of course it's not the same thing everywhere in every state. So inside the handbook that you got in the link, the first prompt in the workbook is to find who makes the state regulations, who governs the cottage food operations for your state. So that is something that you can search in a Google search. But you want to make sure that you are using a reliable source. So look for the .gov or .org type of organizations. You're gonna, when you do that search, your first results are obviously going to be ads, and then there's going to be, you know, places that are not ads, but they're not necessarily reliable and verified resources. So you really want to look for cottage food laws plus your state, and then scroll down to the government websites. So that's how you're going to begin your search. And from there, you're going to try to just connect with some of them are like a county department. Some of them are the Department of Agriculture. It's different in every state. So that's how you're going to begin your search.
Thank you. And then LaShayla asked, how can I search to find out how much I can make a home bakery?
Okay, so I think what you mean here is your earning income limit. And that, so when we were going over the 4 or 5 different elements of your cottage food laws, that is one of them that you definitely want to learn. Once you find out who makes the decisions for your state, whether it's your state Department of Agriculture, whether it's your county offices, that they will usually have a resource link for you. Oftentimes it's a handout or a PDF that you download, and that's where they will spell out these specific things. Most states have earning limits, so you should find that information in that resource that you get from your verified state agency.
And just a question I had sort of related to that is, how do you mentioned, you know, depending on your area, how much baked goods are going for, how much you can sell them for. What process would you recommend for kind of finding out what is a good price point once you figured out your costs and everything?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because, you know, you do all your legwork and you figure out what your costs and your overhead and things like that are, and then you get to mark it up. Some people can mark it up 25 or 30%. Some people can mark it up 50. The way you're going to know is there's a couple of things. You can do a little bit of market research before you start selling and look for home bakeries near you who are also selling. These days, it's not hard to find. Home bakeries have exploded over the past couple of years because of the pandemic. People are home baking. It's becoming a much more reliable way for the consumer to buy their baked goods is directly from a home bakery. And so you see them on Facebook pages. You can see them inside Facebook groups. For example, in my neighborhood, we have my town's community issues page. And on the weekends, people will say, oh, I'm having a Valentine's sale. Comment below if you'd like to buy one of these, cute little heart-shaped boxes full of cupcakes. I would click on anything like that you see and do a little bit of market research and look at where that baker lives and what she or he sells and what their prices are, and see if your prices are similar. But I would caution you not to use that as your only method for pricing your baked goods, because you have to make sure that you're covering all of your ingredient costs and your packaging costs and your own time. And that is work. And so it is tempting to skip that part and just say, well, what does everybody else charge? And that's what I'll do too. But then you're never really sure of what your profits are that way. And, we want to build a sustainable business model where you know how much profit you're making. So I really encourage you to do the work on your pricing and not just jump right over to price matching as
That's
a form of pricing.
good advice. Okay, Jacqueline had a question. She said, if cottage law in my state, which is Missouri, states we have to sell to the final consumer, and a friend is opening a shop that sells a small amount of sandwiches and I sell bread, is there any legal workaround for her to use my bread for the sandwiches that she uses inside of her shop? Or is that not a thing?
I'm afraid to say that it doesn't sound like there is. The final consumer is the person who's going to be eating that sandwich. So that means that you have to sell your bread to the person that is buying the sandwich and eating it. Now, I do know though that this is something that comes up often. Like, you have this idea for how you want to run your business, and then you do your research and you're like, that thing right there is preventing me from doing this the way that I want to do it. So that doesn't mean that you have to give up on your dream. It doesn't mean that you can't bake bread and sell it to this bakery or this sandwich shop, for example. It might mean that you need to go into a commercial kitchen. And that doesn't mean you have to open a storefront, and take out a loan and all that kind of stuff. It might mean that you need a different kind of license though. So that's what I would recommend if you are dead set on baking bread for a sandwich shop, but you can't in your state, then I would say you might want to look at the possibility of renting or doing a little timeshare on a kitchen that is licensed, and then create your bread in a licensed kitchen and then sell it that way. So some states allow you to be a cottage food baker and work in a commercial kitchen and kind of do a dual type of licensing. So that might be an option for you, and for anybody else who kind of feels like the thing that I want to do isn't possible under cottage food laws.
Thank you. Okay, next question. As a business coach, when someone reaches capacity as a home baker, do you recommend increasing prices or moving beyond the home kitchen?
Oh, I love this question. And actually, Katie, this goes back to what you had asked about how do you know when how much your price should be. So you have reached capacity as a home-based baker. This means like maybe you have 20 hours a week that you can do your baking, and that you can, let's say that you do cookies, that you can bake, I don't know, let's say 20 dozen cookies in 20 hours. So you can take orders for 20 dozen cookies each week and be full, right? And fully booked. Then when you're fully booked and you get another order, you have to say no to that customer because you just can't do it anymore. Your one option, yes, is to go into a bigger bakery setting, hire some more staff and things like that. Your first option, what I recommend, is to raise your prices, because what this means is that so many people want your product that they would be willing to pay more. I mean, you're turning away business. So if you're turning away business, that means the demand is high enough to support higher prices. And that's where you can look at that profit margin on your markup and say, okay, my reputation and my brand and my quality, maybe my customer service are all where I want them to be to support more profit on this product. So that is the ultimate goal. If you're in that situation, congratulations, that's a great place to be. I would start raising your prices. Now, you're going to have some people that don't like your new prices, but you're going to have more people coming in because you have availability. So it's something that you're going to have to kind of finesse, right? You kind of want to raise it enough to see how much you are getting at the new price and then find that sweet spot. It's a great place to be in.
Nice. All right. Do you suggest getting a mentor or someone who already has a home bakery to ask questions to?
Well, I had a mentor as a home-based baker. I had a mentor when I first opened my first retail store. And the difference between not having a mentor and having a mentor is that you're going to have success faster. When you have somebody who's talking you through, like we're doing right now, should I raise my prices? Questions like that. If you are working with somebody who has done this before and has experience in these situations, then you're going to find the right answer sooner than experimenting on your own. So when you're working just on your own out there, you're going to learn, but you might learn the hard way. And I've done that. I've learned the hard way many, many times. But when you do have a mentor that can say, don't waste your time with that. This is what you really want to focus on. That's so helpful. The trick is to find a mentor that really understands what your goals are and what your issues are. So somebody who has home baking experience, somebody who knows, if your goal is to go into a commercial bakery, somebody who understands what each one of those pain points are at each step of the way. That's what you want to look for. So yeah, I definitely recommend that.
You. And I would be remiss if I did not once again plug SCORE mentors right here. So it is free to get a mentor from SCORE. You probably have a local chapter if you're not here in Southwest Missouri. And the cool thing is it's a nationwide organization. So if your local chapter does not have a mentor that fits your particular business needs, they can often connect you with someone somewhere else in the nation. So you can find out more about that at score.org. All right. Julie asked, how much do you pay yourself per hour to find that cost?
Okay, so when you're adding up your price, when you're calculating your price for your home baked goods, this is what I recommend. If you were going to go out and do this job for somebody else, if you're doing your custom cakes, for example, and you were going to go and get a job as a custom cake decorator, what would they pay? What's the going rate in your area? You're not paying yourself for all of your business, knowledge and all of your entrepreneurial skills. You're just talking about this technical skill right now of cake decorating and finding out what the going rate for that is. If you were going to have a friend come over and help you on a busy, busy day, what would you offer them as compensation? Those are two things that I think help you kind of dial in on an amount. Most people that I help through with their pricing generally put in about $12 to $15 an hour as their labor rate for preparing their baked goods. But it's completely up to you and what you want to reimburse yourself for. But remember, there's also the profit on this item. So you're going to pay yourself for your time, but as a business, you're going to make a profit too.
Okay. Carrie says, as a beginning business, there's bound to be an oops here and there, like a batch of bread that didn't rise well, etc. Because of timing of sales and needing freshness, what if you can't remake the order before it's due to be delivered? Any tips for overcoming those kinds of hiccups in the beginning?
Okay, so this is like if you took this special order and it just didn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
I think in my experience, I have always been forthcoming with my customers. I don't ever try to be anything that I'm not. And I think the reason they're paying me to bake is because they know how hard it is to get the results that they're looking for. So I always try to fix it. Like in my own business as a wedding cake decorator, I would always get the best product out that I could. If I didn't feel like it looked quite like I wanted them to. One of the things that we kind of underestimate is what our perception of our product is versus what our customers' perception of our product is. And so sometimes when you do something, it feels really personal. You see the flaws in it right away, especially like as a cake decorator. I'll finish a cake and my eye goes right to the flaw. I can see this one little part of piping right there doesn't line up. Chances are that my customer has no clue that that doesn't look quite right. So that is one thing to keep in mind is your customer satisfied with the results? But if you do have like a total oops and you forget like the yeast in your bread or something like that, then I would go sort of above and beyond to make it right for your customer. So one thing that you can do is offer a quick alternative, like talk to them and say, I'm so sorry, I had a baking mix up and the sourdough bread that you ordered just did not rise, but I can put together 2 loaves of my cheddar beer bread for you or something like that. So whatever, chances are they have an event or something that they needed this product for. You don't want them to be empty handed when they go to it. So here's something that I can do that'll work better, or that will, help you through that situation so that you can find another solution. And you gain confidence as you go. You're going to get better and better knowing what you can do and how long it takes you to do it, so that you get that confidence. Every time somebody places an order with you, you say, yeah, I know how much time I need to do this. And I know that my recipe works well every time. So you just get better as you go as well.
Great. Patricia had a question, I think, about when you're sort of calculating costs. How can you determine how much energy, like the energy costs used for baking? She says she lives in the country and uses LP.
So I would put those categories. I think what you mean is like your electric bill or your gas bill, even your water bill, where you're baking out of your house and you do have this added cost associated with it. How do you calculate that? I think that's what you mean there. And so what I generally recommend is in the beginning, I tell people don't worry about that. Until you have a couple of months of baking from your home. So you definitely want to have a starting point of what your utilities are before you started your home-based bakery, and then bake for a while and see what the difference, the offset amount is. So it's usually pretty small. The one I hear the most is water. You use a lot more water washing up dishes all day long. So water tends to be one where people say, I do see a difference in my water bill. So you want to track that for a couple of months and you can add that into your overhead. In general, I think in the beginning, look at overhead as the actual cash out of pocket that you have to do to be in business. So those farmers market fees, or if you're going to pay for a course or something like that, those are the costs that you should put in your overhead in the beginning.
Can you speak a bit on tax ID? Obviously, you can't give tax advice, but paying taxes each year, reporting income, any tips for people to be thinking about as they're pursuing this?
Okay, so yeah, that's true. I cannot give financial advice. I am not. I'm not a financial person at all. I just did a live training last night about preparing your bookkeeping and things like that. So one thing that I can tell you is it really depends on whether you decide to form your business as a sole proprietor or an LLC. And there's kind of some pluses and minuses, that pros and cons about each one, but that's a decision that you need to make. One, based on your state, because some states actually require you to be an LLC. Some states don't require you to be an LLC. And then of course, your taxes are different depending on your business formation. So I would start with your state and finding out what your state requires of you. If they have no requirement and it's your decision, then you can kind of look at those pros and cons of each one and really decide what is the best fit for you. Do you have a lot of assets that you need to protect? You might go with the LLC route. Are you just dabbling in this with a part-time intention? Maybe sole proprietor is right for you. And then, of course, you want to talk to your tax preparer, or even if you're using like a TurboTax program, they have prompts that walk you through either one of those situations. So I will leave it at that, because that is not my specialty. I do recommend meeting with a bookkeeper periodically within your first year, so that you have set things up properly.
Great. Just a little plug for a community resource here too, and I'm sure there's something like this in other areas of the state and country. But if here in the Springfield area are not aware of Supercharge Southwest Missouri, it's a cooperative between a lot of business resource organizations. You can check it out if you Google Supercharge Southwest Missouri. They do have some local businesses, including an accountant, where they hold office hours. So you can meet with them for these free office hours. So that might be a great question to ask in a setting like that, where you might be able to get some more specific tax advice. Let's see. So Justin has a question. Justin is our SCORE's regional director of diversity and inclusion. So he was asking, what are some of the barriers to this home-based business model, some of the challenges that are specific to this?
Well, I think we touched on some of them with the question of, can I sell my bread to this bakery? You know, my state says I can only sell to the end consumer. The cottage food laws, they can be very limiting. And so if you have this business idea, you really have to work around what the limitations are. So the barriers could be that you can't actually fulfill your vision 100%. You really have to adapt and kind of pivot your business model. I think it's really important to look at what the cottage food laws do allow you to do. It's amazing that you can sell out of your home without having to sign a lease on a building, without having to have payroll and employees. So looking at the cottage food laws as something that can be a little bit of a barrier, but also help you to have this incredible opportunity. You know, that's one of them. I think one of the other barriers here is really a mindset issue. This is something where from the amount of bakers that I talk to on a regular basis, one of the sentiments that I hear a lot is that they feel this in their heart, this connection to baking, this love of baking, and it's so personal to them. It's such a passion for them to be able to like monetize something that has always been just pure pleasure. That's kind of a tough crossover for people, where it feels like, I've wanted this for so long, I've wanted this so bad, and now it's time to do it. And we tend to hold ourselves back. So I like to talk about mindset issues a lot, because I feel like we can be our own worst enemy with what we feel like we're capable of or not capable of. And when we can work through those, you can do things like go on to open a retail bakery, or, you know, grow this beyond your wildest dreams and really create a business for yourself out of this opportunity. So those are some of the barriers that I have seen and witnessed and actually experienced myself. But it's so worthwhile to work through those.
And kind of a related question from Justin. What challenges have you faced being a female entrepreneur that you might have some wisdom to share with other female entrepreneurs on the call?
Well, I started this when my children were very young. And so, you know, initially I had babies in the kitchen with me, and I juggled parenthood. I was a single mom when I was growing my businesses. And I felt like, on the one hand, I was never really able to do everything that I wanted to do with my business because, oh, it's 3 o'clock, I got to go pick up kids. And then on the other hand, it opened up a lot more opportunities for me too. So I definitely feel like that was a tough one, being a single mom. You know, I think as women, I feel like it's our own self-imposed barriers that we place on, you know, we place on ourselves, and question our abilities, question our potential, and really working on yourself so that you can have the ultimate level of success that you seek is the biggest barrier that you can crush.
Just a couple more questions, one kind of specific and then one I think will be a great one to end on. So the specific one is, do we have to have an inspector come check out our home kitchens?
It depends where you live. Some states are actually sending out inspectors that come and look at your house. They tend to look for things like, do you have pets in the kitchen? Are there children or other family members kind of walking through a production or a preparation area? Is your food stored separately from your family's food supply? Since the pandemic, I have heard from many people that they're doing virtual inspections instead, where you're submitting photos of your workspace. Several states require no inspections at all. So I don't want to misspeak, but Missouri, I believe, is one that doesn't require an inspection. So those are the kind of things you're going to find out when you find out who is the governing body that, makes the decisions for your cottage food laws. Those are the kind of, that's kind of facts you'll find in that PDF that they supply.
Fantastic. Okay, well, one final question. What is the one thing you wished you knew when starting out that you know now?
Oh, it has to go back to that mindset thing. I wished that I knew how capable I was. I wished that I knew how much I could achieve. And it really has taken me 20 years to get the kind of results that I wanted, because I doubted myself. Maybe I was insecure in the beginning, but this is such an empowering type of work to do when you are your own boss and you decide to work on yourself. It's really amazing how much you can achieve. So I wish I knew that earlier, that I had the abilities all along. And I try to help bakers understand that now, because it makes such a difference believing in yourself and really not placing any limits on what you can do. So you can do this. If you guys are interested, you can do this. There's nothing that's going to stop you if you really put your mind to it.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Allyson. Great information. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We will, before the end of the week, send out a recording along with links to those handouts and Allyson's website and Facebook group, in case you didn't get those down during the meeting. Do go to our SCORE website, swmissouri.score.org, and see what other workshops we have coming up. You can register for those there. And I hope we'll see you all next time. Thank you, Allyson.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
You too. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.